Bitcoin is getting a bounce. The price climbing back towards its all-time high, topping $1 trillion in value again. In an effort to make the digital currency more accessible to investors, our next guest launched a Bitcoin fund. Joining us right now is Greg King. He's the CEO of Osprey Funds. Good morning to you, Greg. Let's talk about where Bitcoin is headed, and also let's talk about some of the risks, because I think that people are trying to understand where we really are, what the upside looks like, and frankly, also what the downside looks like. By default, I imagine, have to be bullish on this. So give us the upside take, but also if you could give us an honest take on what you think the downside looks like in the near term, at least.
In the near term, sure. Yeah, so you're right. We remain bullish. I mean, we think Bitcoin is a disruptive technology that's erupted on the world scene. It's kind of taken people by surprise, even though it's 12, 13 years old at this point. People are still coming to realize just how powerful it could potentially be. And so what we have is an S-curve of adoption that you're familiar with from technology. So since Bitcoin crossed 20,000 in November last year, we're trading up around 55,000. When you look historically at previous periods where it put in an all-time high and kept that high for 100, 200 days or more, once that high is crossed, it goes up in general 900% in terms of those rallies. Now, that seems unbelievable, but you have to understand that this technology is being adopted on a global basis, and the amount of demand potentially for what it's providing is huge. So we're looking at this as a long-term rally, say a year or two, and the consolidations you're seeing, I think, are very healthy. So near term, I mean, you've seen a couple 20, 30% consolidations, which in stock market investing or something like that is just wild. But this is Bitcoin, and things are happening at a different pace. And, it's up 175%. So a 20, 30% correction is to be expected.
What do you think the rational high point is for this? Meaning, if we're having this conversation 5 years from now, are you somebody who says that this is a $200,000 token situation? You think there's $500,000? I mean, but there at some point you'd argue, like gold, it would have to basically stabilize at some general price. No?
Agreed. Totally agreed. I think it will stabilize at some point. It'll become boring. I think we're a long ways from that, probably a decade or more. And so you have this debate around its position vis-a-vis gold. I think that it can become a digital substitute for gold. It's on its way to doing that. And then you have to ask yourself, does it become sort of the same size as gold, bigger than gold, et cetera? You just mentioned it hit $1 trillion. Gold is roughly 10. If they pull even with each other, what does that mean? Does gold come down? Does Bitcoin come all the way up? There are people out there that say it's going to be much bigger than gold over time. Certainly the generations behind me anyways, I think like Bitcoin a lot better than they do gold. So $200,000 as a number, I think, is doable for this rally, let alone the future.
Right. Let me throw two risk factors in. Governments around the world. What's the chance of China or the U.S. government or somebody just says, no, we're not doing this anymore, or you're not doing it like this? And what kind of risk do you think that poses? And the other one is something I wrote about in the New York Times that appeared yesterday online and today in the paper, which is the carbon footprint of Bitcoin is about as inefficient as things come. And while I appreciate you could get onto a green grid at some point, and some people are trying to do that, I wonder whether this, collides with the whole ESG movement, and some of those ESGers get wise to just what the carbon footprint really looks like.
Yeah, no, those are good questions. I think the governmental point has been made over and over. And as time passes, it just feels like to me that governments generally are accepting Bitcoin. And in fact, if we had this discussion a few years back, people would be talking about the anonymity and the use of Bitcoin for nefarious purposes. People are starting to understand it's actually very traceable, scary traceable in a lot of ways to a lot of people who want to use it for those things. So I think those folks have moved on, thankfully. As far as the green footprint, one thing people don't talk about is the types of energy that are being used for Bitcoin. These are, in a lot of cases, energy that's wasted. You have flare gas, for example, as one of the ways that people are harvesting wasted energy, and all kinds of other methods. I mean, of course, it's still a large energy consumption, but I think that the industry will continue to innovate in terms of cleaning up how it sources that energy.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.